I want to talk tonight about the delight of devotion. 1 John 2, 15 to 17. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world is passing away, and the lust of it. But he who does the will of God abides forever. What is the will of God? Matthew 22, 36 to 38. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. To love the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. Affectionately, emotionally, every desire orientated to him, every thought captive, dead to self, to selfish ambition, to self-orientation, dead to all other idols and lusts, dead to the world, but alive to Christ, alive to the cross, alive to his love. Galatians 2:20, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. A life devoted to the one, devoted to the all in all, devoted to Redeemer, bridegroom king, soul lover. I did what all good preachers do. I looked up the definition of devotion, and it said 1, love or enthusiasm for a person or activity. 2, religious worship or observance. How depressing that the definition associated with worship is about religion and observance. But the secular definition associated simply with relationship is about love and enthusiasm. The definition of observance is the practice of observing the requirements of law or ritual. The definition of enthusiasm is intense and eager enjoyment. Which do you want? The requirements of law or intense enjoyment? To live a life of devotion is to live your life intensely enjoying Jesus. How do you enjoy Jesus? You devote yourself to him. How do you do that? You die to the world and you love him with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. Devotion looks like intense and eager enjoyment of Jesus. Joy always flows from love. The root of a devoted life is love. When I fell in love with Jules, my wife, she captivated my heart, and I surrendered to her my devotion. And it's the same with Jesus. When I fell in love with him, I gladly surrendered my devotion to him. In response to his nature, his character, his love for me, and increasingly simply his beauty. Jonathan Edwards once said that the beauty of the Lord bows the will and draws the heart. The beauty of the Lord bows the will and draws the heart. You have to experience and be awakened to his beauty in order to bow the will, which is the life of devotion. You can bend the will in a life of religious observance, but bending requires force, bowing requires love. The will can only bow if it is invaded by the heart, and the heart is only ever attracted to beauty. So his beauty is what awakens devotion. We don't need religious observance, we need to observe him. That's good, I like that one, I got that. That's a great line. Devotion is not a discipline, it's a delight. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart." Devotion is the doorway to discovering your greatest desire, the longing he made in every heart, which is himself. The look of his face, the sound of his voice, the wooing of his covenantal love. Each glimpse of his beauty awakens devotion in me. A devoted life is captivation, beauty-centered, love-centered. You miss that, and the Christian life becomes about calculation, not adoration, obligation, not affection. How many Christians claim to know Jesus and yet are unsatisfied, distracted, depressed, and bereft? That is a sign. Those are the symptoms of having greater love for the world than for him. The only thing that can eclipse every temptation of the world and every false promise of the world is the touch of his love that bows the will and draws the heart. As Eric Gilmour would say of Christians who are unsatisfied and distractive, what's missing is the kissing. Rules never liberated anyone, but intimate love is the only road to liberty. What is required to do God's will? The sweet love exchange. What is required to keep his commandments and live holy? The sweet love exchange. What's required to break addiction, anxiety, and depression? The sweet love exchange. What's required to uncouple from internal turmoil and external pressure? It's the sweet love exchange. Constant, loving, intimate contact is the hallmark of devotion. Dead things come to life when we touch him. Live things start to die when we retreat from him. Faith flows from devotion. Alive, loving intimacy with Jesus feeds a wide-awake faith for miracles. Separation from intimacy with Jesus results in us falling asleep. And falling asleep is simply the loss of faith. Because faith asleep is no longer faith. Fresh love flows from devotion. We're renewed every time we pour out our affection on him. The mark of affection-free faith is faith that's gone stale. And the thing about stale faith is that it can look like faith without being edifying. We can use the same words, but they no longer taste as sweet, they no longer satisfy. A stale loaf of bread looks exactly like a fresh loaf of bread. You just can't eat it. It offers no sustenance. The answer is true devotion, which bows the will and draws the heart. You might have gathered since I came here that I've been trying to teach intimacy ever since I came. I'm not trying to improve your knowledge about it or give you an updated vocabulary to talk about Jesus to others. I'm trying to bring you into it. Anyone can learn the vocabulary of a movement. The intimacy movement in the church has its own vocabulary. Adoration, affection, attention, bridegroom, the kisses of his mouth. Anyone can learn that language, even if they're offended by it. They can talk about love and use the language of intimacy without ever going behind closed doors and stepping into an encounter with love himself. They can go through the motions without ever living a life marked by true devotion, which is not observance, it is joy. So I'm not talking about learning a new language. I'm talking about touching his heart. You have to practice what it means to die to the world and turn the fullness of your affection to him. How do you do that? I heard this recently. Charles Spurgeon once asked the question, how can a stone rise? Which is a great question because we know that a stone has no life. It cannot rise, it can't walk around, it's completely dead, it's unable to breathe, move, or feel. And what Spurgeon was saying is that we have to recognize that our personal, independent inability to perform anything is the secret. Spurgeon followed the question with this statement, "Oh, raise me, Lord." How can a stone rise? Oh, raise me, Lord. There's nothing we can do. It's rest, it's bankruptcy, it's dependence. All you need to do is two things: make time for him and surrender completely to love. It's that simple. Too simple for many. It's to sit in a quiet place every day and say, I love you, Lord. Thank you for your love for me. I receive your love now. All I want is you. Your love is sufficient for me. There's only one thing I need, Lord. Quicken my life. I cannot raise myself. Help me to love you as you deserve, to give you the attention you deserve. Help me make the transition from needing you to do things for me to just wanting you. I want to sit at your feet, not sit on your throne. I want your heart, not your hands. Utter dependency, utter surrender, yielding utterly to his love is all that is required. The delight of devotion. When I was writing that little reflection, I felt the Lord say that I was meant to invite you to a rebaptism tonight. And I thought I was going to have a bowl of water. I thought it was going to be like proper baptism, which I'm up for, by the way. Don't care how many times. But I think what it is a baptism of love. Just a refilling of Holy Spirit. Pours the love of the Father into our hearts. Ezekiel 36, we know the promise, I'll give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I'll take out your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I'll put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you'll keep my commandments and do them. Which is the greatest commandment? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind.